Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melisa Lieberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Welcome to episode 143 of the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I am thrilled that you are here again today and cannot wait to share this topic with you. We're going to be talking about the first step to plan for next year. So if you're listening to this in the real time, it is December. We're thinking about a forward ahead to next year. And I want to make sure that you don't overlook this first step to plan. If you're not listening to this in the real time or you're listening to this again sometime in the future, let's say it's the summer, this is also a really important episode for you to leverage, whether you're planning for a year or a quarter or a month. This is a very important tool to leverage in your business to help you make sure that you hit the goals you're setting and even exceed them. So this is a must listen episode in order to create the business results that you're looking for. And I want to make sure that you get everything out of today's episode that you came for. So I'm going to tell you what the first step is, and then I'll tell you what the inspiration for this episode is. So the first step to plan for next year or next quarter or next month in your consulting business, most of us skip to the goal setting step, right? We may not even write it down, but we think to ourselves, okay, what do I want to do next year? You might think to yourself, okay, I want to create 500K in my business next year. And then you start thinking about how you're going to do that, and you're off to the races in terms of planning. But there's a step before that. The step before that is evaluating your results up to this point, evaluating your past results for the prior period. So many of us skip this step, even though I guarantee you do some form or fashion of this with your own clients. Lessons learned, retrospectives, after action reviews, whatever you want to call it. You do this with your own consulting clients as part of your implementation process or as part of the way that you work with your clients on a consulting basis. You're likely constantly doing some form of evaluation. But when it comes to your own business, like so many things, you get amnesia and you don't remember that this is such an important tool. And that's because it's not a very comfortable process, right? We don't like looking at what didn't go the way we wanted it to go. Or quite frankly, a lot of times we don't even like looking at what went well because we question whether it counted or whether it was a fluke. And so, of course, it would be very common for you to skip this step in the process because it doesn't feel good. But I'm not here today to tell you that it should feel good. It probably won't feel good. And that's not a problem. This isn't personal. This isn't about you. This isn't about your shortcomings as a human being. This is you with your business owner hat on, looking at your business from a neutral vantage point and figuring out where are your opportunities and what did go well that you want to give yourself credit for as a business owner so you can continue to implement those things in your business and even augment them, amplify them. So this is what we're focusing on today. That first step to plan for next year or next quarter or next month so that you can get the results you're looking for in your business. So let's take a moment and ask yourself, how have things gone this past year? As you know, I talk with consultants every single day. It's what I love doing. And so often when I ask this question, the answer has been, it didn't go as planned. It didn't go as planned this past year. I hear things like, I didn't make the money I wanted to, and I worked more than I had planned to. So that's a double whammy. Or I made the money I wanted to, but all my eggs were in one basket. I thought I would have a more diversified business. I had planned to have a more diversified business, and I didn't. It was another year where most of my revenue was from one single client. You may relate to that. Or another answer I hear is, I made the money, but I worked so much more than I had planned to. It was another year where I made the money, because I was working so hard and I planned to make the same amount of money with working less. What's happened? Or I made the money, but it wasn't profitable. I had a low take home number. Those are the types of answers that I'm hearing right now. Can you relate to those? Maybe more than one of them. If your year didn't go as planned, which most of them don't, quite frankly, most of the years don't go as planned, even if you're making more money than you had wanted to, there are things in your business that likely didn't go as planned. Let's look at that. Let's figure that out today, why that is, and help you to build upon those learnings so that you're not repeating the same mistakes over and over again. Not that it's even a mistake, really, right? But repeating the same approach, repeating the same outlook, repeating the same habits. Of course, you're going to get the same or similar results. And we want to make sure that if you have goals, whether it's I had an amazing year and I want even more next year, more income and more time off and more impact. Or whether it's I didn't hit the mark this year, I really want to double down and figure out next year how to make my business goals a reality. Oftentimes, we think the solution here, if your business isn't at the place where you want it to be, oftentimes we think the solution is to change offers. I need to change what I'm offering to my clientele, or I hope that the economy isn't as volatile, or kind of start over and revisit everything in your business. Or as my 13-year-old loves to say, get better. He always says this to me, get better, mom. Maybe that's your approach. I'm just going to get better for next year. Those are not the solutions. The solution is not to jump into planning for next year with the idea that you just need to get better. The solution to start with is to evaluate so you can plan. And that's what we're going to do today is really take a step back and evaluate your results without judgment, without making it horribly painful, so that you can have those learnings and ultimately apply those learnings in your business. Okay, so that is my little bit of a rant before we get started. Let's talk about the agenda. The agenda, today's focus. Again, we're talking about the most important step to plan for next year. When I'm talking about next year, you can insert next quarter, next month, even next week if you want to, as we go through today's content. So I want to make sure that this is a repeatable process for you and an iterative process that you're doing at least 12 times a year, if not on a weekly basis. So, the agenda is we're first going to start off with talking about this idea of answering the question, where are you with your business versus your goal, and how you might be looking at that in a way that's not helpful or productive for you. And then I'm going to give you an example of what that is. Where is your business versus goal? And when you're thinking about it in a slightly different way, the different and evaluating to show you the different type of result you can create. So really, I'm going to give you in these first couple of agenda points some really good understanding of the evaluation process and how it works and how it can work really effectively in your business. And then we're going to wrap up with questions you can ask yourself when you're evaluating your business and ultimately an evaluation framework that you can apply to your business. So, one last caveat, I've said this, I'll say it one last time, which is when I'm talking about yearly planning in this episode, think about it from the perspective of not only yearly planning, but also quarterly planning and weekly planning. So you can just replace those words as you are hearing me, depending on where you're at in the course of the calendar. All right. So that's what we're going to focus on today. I really want to make sure you walk away with this first step to planning out next year and making sure that you spend some time working on it and not skipping it because it feels bad and jumping into setting a goal and then missing out on all of the gold, all of the learnings, all of the things that you can be building upon from what has happened in the last year in your business. All right. Before we dive into the first part of the agenda, I would recommend a companion resource to you. This is really an incredibly valuable companion resource. It is a workbook that's called the Yearly Planning Process Workbook. And you can go download that on my website, melissalieberman.com/plan. And it will give you a fillable workbook where you can walk through the steps that we're talking about today, which is the first step to plan for next year. And then it will walk you through the remaining steps beyond step one to get you to a comprehensive plan for next year. So I've received so many of you letting me know how valuable this tool has been. And I want to make sure for you haven't missed it. If you've downloaded it before, go download it again because I've updated it and it'll be a fantastic guide for you as you are planning ahead for next year and helping you to put this episode into practice. Okay, so let's start off in answering the question. This is a trick question. Where are you? Where are you for this year? This is a question that I often ask when I'm talking to independent consultants, and I get one of four answers. So, first, you answer the question, where are you for this year? Looking back, where are you against your goals, I should say, more than one? And I get back one of four answers. I don't know. I have an idea of where I'm at for this year relative to my goal, but I don't know for sure. Second answer, I'm ahead of goal. Third answer, I'm behind. Or fourth answer, I didn't set goals, really. I might have written a few things down, but I haven't looked at it again. If I'm honest, I didn't really set a goal. You're in one of those four buckets. And to be clear, we're going to talk about this in more detail here in a moment. You could be in all four of those buckets. Likely you are in all four of those buckets, not one of those buckets. And that's really important to know. So that's why it's a trick question. You're not in one of those four things unless you just didn't set any goals anywhere for anything. You're likely in all four of those buckets in some form or fashion. And so we want to get really clear about where you're at and help you to evaluate why that's the case so you can build upon that for next year. Okay, so I'm going to start off with giving you an example here, and then we're going to leverage this into the questions you want to be asking yourself as for an evaluation. So, where are you? I want to give you an example from last year. So, last year, over 12 months ago, I think now, I asked a consultant where she was with respect to her goals. And she tried to brush it off. She tried to say, it wasn't a great year. I didn't hit my revenue goals, or I'm not going to hit my revenue goals. Kind of stressed and worried. I noticed that I was spending so much time working on client delivery more than I had expected. I didn't work on my business as much as I had planned. I just want to flip the calendar and start over again. But again, the step one is not to flip the calendar and start over again. The step one is to evaluate these results, to figure out what's working and what's not working and what she can do differently. And so I didn't let her brush it off. We dug into it. And I first asked her, what did you want? What did you want out of your business this past year? And she told me she had planned and forecasted 500K in her business while taking off 6 weeks, while working 4 days a week on client delivery and 1 day a week on her business. I asked her why she wanted that. And she said, I want to keep growing my revenue, but I also don't want to work as much as I had been working. So she had some pretty clear answers about what her goals were and why she wanted those goals. And then I asked her, well, what percentage did you achieve? And she had an answer for me from a financial perspective. I think it was 325 or right around there versus the 500 she had set. And I asked her what percentage she achieved from a working perspective, a utilization perspective. And her answer was, I worked 50 hours, so maybe took 2 weeks off and 5 days a week, if not 6, to create that 350. And I asked her, why was all of that? Why did you create those results? Why did you work so much more than you had planned to create less than you had set a goal for? Why did you achieve those? The answer she gave me, and this is so typical, is starting to explain and justify so many market conditions. She said, "Well, my client was going through a merger and it was just so much chaos. It ended up really consuming so much more of my time. I didn't raise my fees as I had planned. I didn't land new clients as I had planned. And so at the end of the day, it was really, she was boiling it down to, well, it was my client's situation that created the results that I got, which are less than the goal." And I said to her, let's dig into this more. It's not an external thing. You're not at the mercy of your clients. Like, let's really dig in here. Let's figure out why you truly created these results. What was the way you were thinking about the goals that you had set and the changes you would need to make in your business and the way you're thinking about your business and your clients to get different results? What were the habits that you had that led to you to fall short of the goals you had set? What were the systems that weren't working in your business the way that they needed to operate in order for you to hit your goals? Asking those types of questions. And so we worked through this. We worked through this on our coaching call. She worked through this as homework after our coaching call. And she came back the next week and said to me, I realized that after doing this exercise and getting, 4 or 5 pages of learnings from this past year of what I wanted to keep and what I wanted to amplify that was working and what I wanted to stop doing, what I wanted to adjust. She said to me, her biggest aha from all of that she hadn't realized before doing that work, doing that evaluation, which is what we're talking about today. She said she realized that she had set a goal, that 500K working less. She had set the goal, but never really committed to it. She didn't believe it was possible to hit that goal. She didn't believe it was possible to make more money and work fewer hours and fewer weeks in the year. She didn't believe you could get both of those things. And certainly she didn't want to raise her prices. It felt really uncomfortable. She hadn't raised them for 2 or 3 years. So that wasn't a comfortable thing to do. And so as a result, she didn't take the steps to purposefully implement the changes she needed to make in her business, her systems, her processes, her habits, her way of thinking. She set the goal. It felt kind of good. I'm going to make 500K. I'm going to work less. I'm going to have more space to work on my own business, not constantly working on my client delivery. She set that goal in her mind, but she never committed to it because she didn't think it was possible to have all of those things. It wasn't her client's, crazy year that had diverted her from the goals in her business. It was the fact that she hadn't really committed to the goals that she had set and didn't take the steps to purposefully implement what she needed to implement in order to get those results in her business. She never sat down to figure out how would she be able to hit the goal of making more money and working less and having more balance between working on her business and working in her business, and mapping out the details around what that was going to take from the perspective of not just the math and mechanics of it, but the way she was going to have to shift her thinking that she could make more money and work less and have more balance in her business and in her life, to believe that was fully possible so that she could then commit to the goal. She hadn't done any of that work. And so that's great news because she wasn't at the mercy of her client, and it wasn't her client's fault or the economy's fault or anyone else's fault that she hadn't reached her goals last year. Again, we're talking about an example from last year. I'll tell you why I'm sharing one from last year here in a second. But she realized, which is such great news, that this was all on her. It had nothing to do with those external forces that I just described to you. And because it was all on her, that gives her all of the ability to make the shift. And so the reason why I wanted to share an example with you from 1 year ago is so that you could see what happened after this process. So it was last year we went through this. really dug into her business to figure out why she had fallen short of the goals that she had loosely set, and went through this first step of the planning process, which was evaluating. She figured out that she hadn't committed truly to the goal that she had set. It just felt good. And she hadn't done the work to figure out what it meant to set this goal in terms of shifts to her business model and the way she was thinking. And so after we got that download of learnings from this evaluation process, then what we did was take all of those and figure out what she needed to adjust in order to get the results she was looking for this year. And this year, compared to last year, is like night and day in her business. Taking those learnings and being comfortable with seeing the learnings where she fell short. She fell short because she didn't commit to the goal she set. She kind of got the dopamine hit for setting the goal, but didn't really commit to it because she didn't think it was realistic. And so we took all of those learnings and we applied those to the strategies that she implemented this year in her business, including raising her fees and shifting some of her service offerings and the way she was delivering and is delivering for clients. And we also put in a place for her to shift the way she was thinking about her business, the way she was thinking about her goals, that it is possible to create $500,000 in her business and work less and have more space to work, both balance working on her business and working in her business, as well as balancing her work life and her personal life. It is possible to do all of those things and really helping her to get to the mindset where those things are reconciled. They're not opposing each other. They're complementing each other. So the plan we put in place, if she hadn't done the evaluation, we would not have addressed some of these mindset gaps that she had. She would never be able to create the results that she created in this past year because in her mind, before that, these were two opposing goals. I want to make more money and I want to have more time off. They were opposing goals. Even though she was setting them, she didn't believe they were both possible. So of course she was going to not hit both of those goals that she wanted to hit. Because of the learnings and the process that we put in place, she was able to start reconciling those two things and seeing mentally how they were possible, committing to them. And ultimately, this year, she's going to hit over 500, having worked 40, I'm just thinking about the math here, 42 weeks this year. So she took 10 weeks off and has hit the goals. We're not even at the very end of the year. So you can see the way that this process works, which is really digging into what you wanted to achieve in this last year and what percentage of that did you achieve and why is it that number without blaming those external circumstances. It could be so easy, especially this year, to say, you know what, everyone's having a hard time. Corporate is laying off so many people. You could come up with 1,000 reasons why that justify the results that you've got, that put the onus on other people, that put the onus on other conditions, that put the onus on external circumstances. But I'll tell you right now, there's no value in that. There's no value in that. That's just justifying the results to make you feel better. You don't have to feel bad about your results. You don't need to justify them by creating some kind of story for yourself about how it's not your fault. The switch here is there's not a problem. There's nothing wrong with you. This isn't personal. This is looking at your business and evaluating it and saying, what did I control last year? If I'm 100% responsible for all of these results, why didn't I hit the goal that I had set or the goals that I had set? Or why did I hit the goals that I had set? Let me do more of that. So that's why it's so important to get to the place where you're frequently evaluating so that you can build upon those learnings. Again, I'm not telling you anything you don't know or likely recommend to your own consulting clients. But when it comes to you and your own business I feel like so many of us as consultants, we just skip over the things we know that work best. And I don't want you to do that to yourself. So let's go back to the questions I gave you a moment ago, and hopefully you answered them. Where are you for this year? One of four answers, which, as I told you, was a trick question. It's probably all of these answers in some way. I don't know. I'm ahead of goal. I'm behind goal, or I didn't set goals. So let's dive into each one of these, unpack each one of them. I'm going to share with you when you think about those four answers, what to do with them. So you can start to apply and implement the type of learnings and adjustments that I just shared with you that consultant made over this past year and has dramatically shifted her business as a result of it. So let's go into each one of them separately. Number one, I don't know. I don't know. You may not know where you are against your goal in some form or fashion, right? Your goals are not just, a lot of times we think about the money goals because those are the easiest to set and to measure. But you have other goals. How do you want to be using your time? What type of work do you want to be landing? What type of clients do you want to be working with? So think about all the different aspects of the goals in your business. And likely there are some of those aspects that you don't know where you're at with respect to the goal that you set. Ask yourself why. Why don't you know? It's not because you don't have time to track it. Why don't you know? What are you avoiding emotionally? Those are the questions you want to be asking yourself if you don't know where you're at relative to your goal. And the reason why is so that you understand what you're avoiding. Typically, it's some form of fear, a fear of failure, a fear of rejection, a fear of feeling inadequate, a fear of feeling disappointed, a fear of feeling scared. That's a double thing, right? Some of us are afraid to feel scared, scared about the future. But you want to know what you're avoiding. When you say you don't know where you are against your goal, you want to know what you're avoiding so that you can address that root cause, so that you can address the fear that is causing you to put your head in the sand. Okay, the second answer, I'm ahead of goal. I'm ahead of goal. Well, then, Melissa, why does this evaluation process matter? If I'm ahead of goal, I'm good to go. I should just do more next year or do the same thing next year. No, if you're ahead of goal, you want to know why you're ahead of goal. You might be ahead of your goal in terms of the type of work that you're landing. You might even be ahead of your goal when it comes to financially. You might not necessarily be ahead of your goal when it comes to your utilization or the names of the clients, the companies of that you want to be working with, whatever it is. But again, in the situation where you're ahead of your goal in some aspect of your business, that's fantastic news. Don't skip over it. Ask yourself, why am I ahead of goal? It might be that you really dialed in that particular aspect of your business and you want to recognize that. You want to recognize, what did I do that is working, so you can repeat that. You might also say to yourself, you know what? I hit that goal because I realized I made a slam dunk type of a goal. Why did I do that? I talked to you, so many of you, and I can relate to this too. Well, I set a goal that I knew I could achieve so I wouldn't feel bad. So I knew I could achieve it because I'm an achiever and I love achieving things. I don't want to fall short. You're leaving opportunity on the table, my friend, by setting a realistic, safe goal. Like, know that about your situation and address that in your business, because you're leaving opportunity for yourself, potentially financially, but also from a work-life balance perspective and from feeling challenged and continuously growing perspective. So if you're ahead of goal, first and foremost, celebrate that. Celebrate that. And then ask yourself, why am I ahead of the goal? What do I want to keep replicating and implementing in my business that's working and amplifying? And also, did I set a too safe of a goal? And why did I do that? And how do I want to adjust that moving forward? Okay, the third answer you likely have in some form of your business is you're behind your goal. It might be financially, it might be the way that you had planned to use your time, it might be the type of work that you wanted to land. You might be behind your goal. So often we see this as a pass fail. I fell short, I failed. That's not the case. There's a continuum here. The first thing you want to be asking yourself is, what progress did you make? What percentage did you complete? Give yourself credit for that. You are not in a pass fail environment. Ask yourself, what progress did I make? And really ground into the fact that you didn't fail 100%. There's no 100% failure here. There's something in between. And ask yourself, why is that? Why is it that number? Why did I hit that percentage of my financial goal, for example? Or why did I hit that percentage for my utilization goal, for example? Ask yourself, why didn't I hit the goal for the remaining portion? Why not? Again, taking 100% responsibility for this versus blaming and justifying using external conditions. That's not what we're looking for here. What we're looking for here is, how do you have full control over everything so that you can pivot and adjust and build upon what you've learned? Oftentimes, this situation where you're behind the goal comes down to, quite frankly, what I was describing to you earlier with that example. You stop believing in the goal at some point. You stop believing that goal was possible. And so you stopped working intentionally toward it. Maybe you fell behind a little bit and you had this idea that every quarter should be somewhat even, or you had this thought process that there's no way you could make the bulk of your revenue in Q3 and Q4. And so when you fell behind, you kind of let your foot off the gas. You didn't believe the goal was possible. And so you fell back into some of your old ways. That's so good to know, because next year, when you're at the point where you're falling behind with your goal, you want to think about, and it's not an even linear process, which, by the way, is never an even linear process. Then you have learnings about, oh, I've been in this situation before. Here's how I know and had planned ahead to handle this. So that's so important when you're thinking about where you're behind on your goal and why, and how you want to adjust for that moving forward, without judging yourself that there's a problem or that it somehow means you're not capable of achieving the goals that you've set. That's just not the case. And then the fourth scenario here, you may have answered, which is, I didn't set a goal. I mean, I might have written something down on the paper, Melissa, but I don't even remember what it was. Listen, I'm not going to yell at you. Sometimes I yell at you on this podcast. I'm not going to yell at you for not setting a goal, but you don't want to do that again. You want to know why. We're not here to chastise you. We're here to say, why didn't I set a goal? Let me just look myself in the mirror and be really honest. Why didn't I set a goal? Almost always the case is, I didn't want to feel disappointed. I just wanted to see what happened and not have a goal that I felt bad about missing. Listen, my friend, you're a business owner. I think the irony here is, oftentimes I hear from consultants who say to me, you know what? I'm so frustrated with corporate for a variety of reasons, right? And one of them is, there's not a clear enough set of objectives. Not everyone is moving in the same direction. There's a lack of structure and definition about what success is. Those are some of the reasons why we leave corporate. And then we do the same thing to ourselves in our own business. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Don't make this personal. Set a goal for your business moving forward and get to the place where you're okay with feeling disappointed, where you're feeling okay with even feeling inadequate or worried. Listen, you're a business owner. Those feelings come with the territory. Your goal is not to just skip over setting goals entirely so you don't have to feel bad. That's not the way. The way is, I'm going to set a goal and I'm going to learn to increase my capacity to feel negative emotions, to feel stress, to feel worry, to feel disappointed, to feel inadequate, to feel doubt. That's the key here from a learnings perspective. So if you did not set a goal, I could almost always point back to the reason why you didn't is because you didn't want to feel bad about your results against the goal. So you're protecting yourself ahead of time, as you do as a human, not a problem. But don't do that to yourself again. Instead of skipping over the goal, which as a result, I mean, you and I both know that's not the way to operate a business. You don't go operating a business. You would never tell your clients to not set goals for the year, to not set objectives for the year, to just see what happens. But yet you do that to yourself. And it may not be across the board, right? I want to say that, reemphasize that. You might have set a monetary goal, but you might not have set a goal about what type of work you want to be landing or what your utilization looks like or how you want to balance working on your business with working in your business. There are likely goals that you overlooked. And again, it's not a problem, but you don't want to be doing that from the perspective of, "Yeah, I just don't want to feel bad when I don't hit the goal." Instead, you want to take away the learning from that of, oh, I see that I am still avoiding feeling disappointed. And so I didn't set a goal. And this year, as a result of that, I'm going to include in my plan for the next year getting better at feeling disappointed and not taking it personally. So hopefully that gives you some really good answers here. We're going to move on to an overall framework you can leverage here in a second. But I wanted to spend a lot of time on this episode digging into these four scenarios because you're in all four of these in some way relative to your results from the past period. And I want to make sure that you have some really good examples and questions to be asking yourself so that you can diagnose why you have the results that you've got. Learn why that is from a root cause perspective if you're taking 100% responsibility for your results and not blaming or justifying external things and answering these questions so that you've got this foundation and this set of learnings from which to then plan your next year, your next quarter, your next month, whatever it is. All right. So those are the four different ways of looking at your results versus your goal and doing that evaluation. And now as we wrap up this episode, two things. Don't forget to go download that yearly planning workbook. It is at melissalieberman.com/plan. You probably know, but I'll tell you again anyway. My name is missing a bunch of letters. It's Melisalib as in boy, ERMAN.com/plan. Go download it. Even if you've already downloaded it in the past, it's updated. And this will give you a lot of the structure that we're talking about today. And now let's wrap up this episode with the framework that I promised you. So, this is a high level evaluation framework. I've walked you through some examples here in the bulk of this episode, but to take this up a level, really you were looking at three steps here for your evaluation approach as the first step of planning. This is the first step of planning, evaluating your past results. So the first thing you want to be doing is getting clear on your results versus your plan. That's what we were just really talking about for the last 10 or 15 minutes. What are your results versus your plan? It's one of those four things, right? I don't know. I'm ahead of goal, I'm behind goal, or I didn't set a goal. It's one of those four things. And thinking about it from all of the different vantage points in your business, financially, the nature of the work you're landing, the utilization that you've had, the way you've balanced your working on your business and working in your business, the way you've balanced your business with your personal life, and any other metrics that are important to you. Really sit down and spend some time with this. And again, you can use that workbook that I shared with you as a way to guide this, but look at those results for yourself and figure out for every aspect of your business, what are your results versus the plan? And again, if you didn't have a plan, I gave you some ways to tackle that as well. Why not? Then you're going to want to ask yourself, why did I create those results? Again, from the perspective of 100% responsibility. We're not looking to justify or make ourselves feel better by talking about how the economy was this or that, or our industry was this or that. None of those things are helpful. What we're looking for here is, why did I create those results? 100% responsibility from the vantage point of this is helpful to me in my business, not from a judgmental perspective that we're trying to flog you here. All right. So look at this and think to yourself, why did I create those results? Some of the facets of this could look like, how effective are my business systems right now? What about my business systems created those results? What about my consistency of my habits created those results? What about this is one that is almost always skipped over, and I want to emphasize this. What about my thinking created those results? How was I thinking in a way that created those results? What was the quality of my thinking that created those results? We often think about the things we're doing or not doing that created the results. You've also got to look at the way you were thinking that created those results. How are you thinking about yourself? How are you thinking about your pricing? How are you thinking about your clients and their receptiveness to you and your expertise and your pricing? Again, we're not looking for external inputs here about market conditions. All right. So that was the second part of the framework. Why did I create those results? And then the third piece is, what do I want to change going forward about my systems, about my habits, about my thinking? Get all of that down for yourself. So now you've got an incredible, rich, thorough set of learnings that you can build upon as you move into planning for next year versus just rushing to say, oh, I want to make 500K working 40 weeks in the year, and I'm sure I'll make it happen. I'm going to feel great about setting this goal. We want to make sure first you've got all of these learnings in place so that then it helps you to inform what the goals are that you set, not just a financial one, but all the different aspects of your business, and then are able to move forward with the planning against that to make it happen. All right. That's what I've got for you today. Don't forget to go download that workbook and put this episode into action for your business so you can set yourself up to have the best year ever next year. You can set yourself up to have the best quarter you've ever had, or even the next best month you've ever had. Go put this into action so that you can set yourself up and really take advantage of all of the time you've been spending in your business and learning so much from what's working and what's not working and how you want to make adjustments from there. All right. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again next week. Take care. Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melissalieberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.